Yeah. We'll probably start with like some introductions and stuff. And like Lillian, you can talk about your practice, and Amanda, you can talk about Maple and some of like what you do. And then like you do you want to then share the slides, Lillian, and then we can kind of
Yeah,
talk about like, whatever comes up.
perfect.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's 5:05.
So
So um what time is it there, Lillian?
it is 7:05 a.m.
Oh
thanks
my
to
goodness.
daylight savings time. Usually
Uh,
I would start at 8, but things have changed.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay.
In Arizona, it's been really kind of screwy because I had to move everything an
Oh,
hour.
you're in
The house
Arizona.
changes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you guys came, that you guys agreed to do this. I feel like the rest of the Jewish community does not know enough about like Persian traditions and specifically how Persian Jews sort of, live in that space, right? And I was doing a little bit of research about Nowruz, and the only thing that I saw was that it stems from a Zoroastrian tradition, which is
Yeah.
really cool because it's like, that just almost like having a sister community that also has been through the ringer, right? And I don't know a ton about the Zoroastrians, but it was kind of cool to see that, and the fact that in some ways you get kind of three New Years that way. Like you've got like the secular New Year, the Jewish New Year, and the Persian New Year, um, which is really exciting. Um, so I guess first, why don't we start with Lillian and then we'll go to Amanda. Share a little bit about, I guess how you came to do what you do in the therapy community.
Okay. So let's see. I grew up in LA. I'm the child of immigrants from Iran, Jewish Iranians from Tehran. And I was always sort of aware because of my parents' immigration story of discrimination, hearing about the ways that my parents grew up in Iran and how they were treated also after 9/11. So I grew up with an awareness of oppression and discrimination. And I knew when I went to UC Santa Cruz, which, if anyone is unfamiliar, huge liberal bubble, that's when I was like, okay, I want to advocate for marginalized groups. Then afterwards, I thought maybe I'll be a teacher or something like that. But I think also being a child of divorce, I was just kind of trained to like I have spidey senses when it comes to conflict. I think a lot of children of divorce can relate. So I got very sensitive and naturally empathic and able to connect with others who were experiencing distress. And so after some like searching around for maybe a year, I interviewed a friend of mine who was also going to, I think he was going to Pepperdine, and I decided to marry my passion with this ability that I have to connect with people and went into therapy. And so now I work with multicultural Californians, mostly marginalized groups, a lot of like myself, first generation people, the queer community. My origins, so in practicum, I started working with survivors of sexual trauma, so I still do that. And yeah, now I'm in private practice. I have been since 2020, and I take full advantage of being able to travel around because the pandemic was a game changer
Yeah.
in many ways for our field.
Are you seeing clients
And
from over there?
yes, I certainly
Nice.
am.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. I start around 7 a.m. Here in Thailand, which is this time for you all, and I go until about like noon.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I see clients Monday through Thursday.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I'm licensed in the state of California, so I'm only seeing clients that live in California.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a game changer. It makes the world feel like a smaller place. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope I don't sound insensitive saying that because I also know it was a very like serious thing.
Yeah.
And also if we just focus on like the work aspect, I mean, it changed everything for everyone.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot more access to care too. Um,
Yeah.
so,
People are showing up sometimes in their pajamas from the comfort of their home. They don't have to deal with traffic. So I think my clients enjoy it as well.
Yeah. So when you got to college, was it just being around all of like folks with like big idealism and sort of big drive to change things, or what was it that pulled you in that direction?
What you just described is like very much embedded in the culture of UC Santa Cruz. It's a very huge liberal hippie bubble.
Yeah.
And I started taking classes like psychology and law and women's studies and community activism. And so I started to kind of immerse myself and really learn like what's behind the curtain in a way.
Yeah.
And I think that those classes, most notably, especially psychology and law, are you familiar with Craig Haney? In
No.
the Stanford prison experiment,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
did
yeah.
like
Yeah.
yeah. So he was the grad student who put that on,
Oh
and
well.
so I learned so much from him about like the where psychology and law meet,
Yeah.
and that class was a game changer for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Um, and okay, was there one more question? So like when you decided to become a
please.
therapist, what were the like I mean, I guess we all have this thing as Jews, right? Like we kind of share with our parents our direction and it's like, well, what's the feedback? Like what is everybody, So how did they feel when you decided that this was your path?
I'm going to tell you something that happened before that because
Okay.
it's relevant context. So when I was at Santa Cruz, I remember telling my dad that I wanted to go into community activism.
Yeah.
He's like, like Persian, overprotective, very stereotypical Persian Jewish father. And he's like, who's going to pay you to be a community activist? So I think that therapy was like, okay,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
kind of they were more okay with that
Okay.
than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course there was pushback. I'm sure they would have wanted me and my sister to be a doctor or a lawyer, but that's okay. We're both in the field of mental health.
Yeah. Is she a therapist too?
Yeah, she's actually a psychologist. So
Oh,
she's based
cool.
in NorCal. Yeah.
Oh, nice, nice. Very
Yeah.
cool. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And I love the way that all came together because it's like, especially today, I feel like so many of the voices in Jewish leadership and in Jewish mental health it seems like those who are more on the right politically have really taken the mic in a lot of ways. And people of those beliefs need care too, but like I'm
Yeah.
glad that you're like that there are plenty of Jewish therapists who are also sitting in that space that, considers layers of oppression and, supports the underserved and believes that like queer and trans identities exist and are real, and like in dignity for people and all of that stuff and it's really nice to see that all of that can be steadfast even with everything that our whole community's been through in the last year and a half.
Absolutely. And I will say, Helena, props to you for recognizing such a big need in our community because I was a part of the support group that you put on. I think it was called Left Out.
Left
Was it?
behind.
Do you remember? Left Behind. And that was so, yeah, like I'm on the left and I feel like I'm left behind since October 7th. Amanda and I spoke about this a little bit earlier this week, and that was just on the nose.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. And if I'm thinking about starting it up again, maybe after Pesach or something. So if you're interested.
There's definitely a need. Yeah, I would attend.
Yeah, cool, cool. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm so glad you're here too. And if as far as clients go, do you have space for new clients right now?
Yes, I absolutely have space. So as I mentioned, I'm seeing clients Monday through Thursday in the evenings. Everything is virtual because I am abroad.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and it is pretty seamless. I just need a good Wi-Fi connection,
Nice.
and I'm absolutely open.
That's awesome. Awesome, awesome. And
Yeah.
I guess before we go to Amanda, well, why don't you two share a little bit? How did you know each other? Because I know that like the Persian community has a lot of like, closeness and it's a very close-knit community. But it's also a huge community. So like how do you two know each other and how did you
Well, I
cross?
believe we met actually at a Jewish queer event where she showed up as an ally,
Yeah,
a Shabbat dinner at my house.
nice.
And I was like, who is this amazing ally that has shown up and, is really sticking her neck out for us? And, we had a handful of allies in the beginning when we first started organizing, and, just some would plop in here and there. And Lillian was definitely like, go, go, you guys, so she was like an early cheerleader of the movement. And so since then, yeah, we just became friends and it's been fun. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah,
then we happened to be at the same gym for a while, which was cool.
that's awesome.
Small
Also,
world.
we
Small
had
world.
some one-on-one time. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. It was
awesome.
nice. Yeah.
So you guys live in the same neighborhood then?
Well,
Right?
right now we
Oh.
don't.
Well, right. Thailand. Yeah.
But yeah, I think so. I think we were down the street from one another at some point.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Super.
it's LA is so massive that it's cool when you can kind of find each other nearby. So
Yeah, and maybe good information too, because people joining from elsewhere might not have the context, but the biggest diaspora of Iranians, and I think Iranian Jews, are in Southern California. So when you say small world, it certainly feels that way, especially in LA.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and with everything that comes with culture and sort of, everything that I have a few Persian Jewish clients, and one of the salient themes is like how much goes into like entertaining and big parties and just all of so I mean it sounds like quite a community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely colorful,
Yeah,
rich history.
yeah,
Yeah. And speaking of, being quote left behind, the Persian community definitely veers right as far as political
yeah,
persuasion. So if you are a more left-leaning Iranian, there's a lot to unpack there as well.
yeah. We're
Yeah.
gonna definitely have to delve into that because I think one of the things that I think folks are gonna really appreciate about this recording, and us sitting down tonight is understanding all of those nuances because
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely have an Ashkenormativity issue, but I don't think it's the way that non-Jews are painting it. I mean, it really isn't just about melanin, and it's not about drawing some line in the sand. I think the thing is that we just unfortunately a lot of those who are more like the more dominant Jewish American stereotype tend to be Ashkenazi. And so like we like people naturally come from a frame of reference of what they know. And if they don't know something, then they should go seek it out. And I'm really glad that we're able to do that because,
Yeah.
you know, it matters in a big way.
Yeah,
So
well, we're relatively new Jewish Americans, being here we have friends whose families have been in America for forever, whereas
Generations.
generations, whereas we kind of, I feel like we're all first generation here and making our names for
now
ourselves.
is this like after the revolution, like it was just sort of Jewish flight, or what decade was this?
This was the late 80s, sorry, late 70s, so 78 to be precise.
Okay.
But all of those families settled. I was born in 86. I'm not sure when you were born, Lillian.
92.
Yeah, so we have people coming into their adolescence and then their 20s, but there's a huge amount of young Persian Jewish owned businesses that have very big traction. For example, Tinder was founded by a Persian Jew.
Oh,
Not
Grindr
know that.
Grinder was founded
oh
by,
well,
by a
but I
Persian.
wouldn't give to sit down with that family, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it
Awesome.
was, we have, Fab Fit Fun was founded by Persian Jews. Me Undies was founded by Persian Jews. So there are a lot of
Awesome.
startups and young companies that are founded by young Persian Jews in their 20s
That's
and
awesome.
30s that are now starting to come after our parents moved from Iran in the late 70s. So that's kind of what's happening now is you're starting to see more Persian Jewish traction on the larger scale.
That's awesome. And Amanda, did your parents come? I guess it would be around the same time as Lillian's did then. Like they all come.
So
Okay.
when did your parents come, Lillian?
So my parents left around 79. My dad went to college in America. My mom actually moved to Israel. And then some of our family is still in Israel. So it was a bit of like a split, which I think has often happened. But it was around the early 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So early 80s. My dad did his residency. He's a cardiologist. He did his residency in Chicago in 85, oh, sorry, 75. So he was here before the revolution
Wow.
and then kind of established himself in the States. And then once everything was going down in Iran, they actually started transferring all of our familial assets to my dad, who was living in the States. So it was like a coincidence essentially that he was already living in the States and that's where they wanted to emigrate to. And then I don't know, my parents were set up. My parents were basically, my mom was this, my mom actually grew up as an Iranian and as a brown Jew in Germany.
Wow.
And she was born in 1960.
Wow.
So, going to school with kids of Nazis and stuff was very difficult, not only for any Jew, but also for a brown Jew.
Yeah.
She would tell me stories about coming home, and this was in Berlin. And she would come home and she would kind of like scrub her face, try to scrub the melanin off of her face because she wasn't looking like all the other kids. I know. So it was like super heartbreaking. But my dad is definitely in love with Europe and European culture. And when he heard that there was an Iranian, European, Jewish woman who was looking to get married, he jumped at the opportunity to try to woo
Wow.
her. And they met in LA, and it was arranged in the sense that it was arranged by family, but pretty much that was pretty much it. They dated for 6 months and got married.
Oh
So
wow. So is it similar to like I know in the very observant Ashkenazi community they have like Shad Khan and all of that with like the setups and the
the
all
setups are pretty much done by family for other family members rather than there being a Shad Khan whose like job it is to set people up. It's like you just have, and correct me, Lillian, if I'm saying anything incorrectly, but it's more like, Lillian, do you know Soraya and Eunice Nazarian?
I know the name. I know the Nazarian name, but I'm not sure.
They set up my family, for example. Like there are certain like people of prominence that will then go ahead and put their name out there and vouch for certain individuals to get married. And if there's somebody vouching for you and vouching for the both of you, then it's pretty much, at least for my parents, it was set that they were going to be married. There wasn't really many options. Yeah, it was like
okay.
you only get three choices, and my mom was like, that one." Like,
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, yeah, so I know that for you, Amanda, you started out in medicine and then you moved toward more like public health type of stuff, and community health. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
well, it's funny that Lillian was like, my dad wanted me to be, or she wanted to be a community activist, and her dad wanted her to be a doctor, and now like I'm a community activist, and like former doctor, and to answer the question of like who pays you is a very important question. I'll tell you, it's likely going to be the Jewish Federation of Greater Los Angeles in one way or the other. So I was, after leaving medical school, I joined a federation sponsored queer Jewish organization called JQ, or Jewish Queer International. That organization paid my salary to do LGBTQ Jewish activism, mostly in the Persian community. And then now I work at Maple Counseling, which is why I'm here as I'm no therapist. You guys go through so much. I still can't believe it, how much you guys go through. The general public needs to know how much therapists go through because therapists do it themselves, but the general public just doesn't get it. They just think anybody can be a therapist and not like there's like this whole Olympic level hoop, process that you have to go through. That if people knew how hard it was, I feel like they would. I've only come to know it working for Maple Counseling. But now that I'm at Maple, I mean, Helena, do you know what I'm kind of saying with this?
Yeah,
That like now the only reason why I have insight into how hard it is to become a therapist is because now I train future therapists,
yeah,
and I, having come from medicine, cannot believe how stringent and strict this process is,
yeah.
as even as compared to medicine. So I just would love that soapbox one day to start
Yeah.
telling people how hard it is to be a therapist.
We don't do a good enough job of that. And I think specifically in California, because I don't know if you know, Amanda, but every state regulates the training differently.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
California has extra hurdles because not only do you have to do all of those post grad hours, but you have to do them within a certain number of years or else they don't count and you have to appeal to your board. And that's not necessarily the case everywhere. So if you move too slowly through your post grad hours, I mean, you have extra hurdles too. And I mean, it's really, really a lot that therapists have to do. We don't do a good enough job explaining it to people, I think.
If you, I will do it. I will take a microphone and I will say, "Hey, everyone, please understand. I work with these people every single day. Please understand how hard it is to be a therapist. If you only knew, you would respect, I think, you'd respect the actual profession as you would any other medical profession for a lot of people that currently do not. Sorry, I'm have a
I'm
big
we're
passion.
Lillian and I are like,
Someone
please
needs to
go
say it.
on,
Yes,
Someone
Lorraine.
yes.
needs to say it.
I will
We're
shout it from
too
the
tired
rooftops.
to say
Yeah,
I will shout
there.
it from the rooftops. Like, therapists need more credit. I see it. I'm on the inside now and still not a therapist. And I would never become one because it's too hard. Like,
It is hard. Yeah.
So when
Um,
I saw Amanda on the thread, I was like, what are you doing here? Like, because
yeah,
we kind of lost touch for a while. And I was like, I didn't know that you're working for Maple. You're like in the therapy world. So that was a lovely surprise.
yeah, so good. So good. So happy.
how did you land there?
How did I land at Maple? It was
Yeah.
completely like I was searching for health administrative jobs. Why? Because I'm a former doctor and that I did admin work in JQ, and I was like, I can do organizing, I can do admin, I can do whatever. And then I saw that a job was posted for Maple to do admin at Maple, and I applied for this job, and essentially they were like, hey, would you consider maybe helping run the actual clinic? Like, I applied for like a the admin job to run the nonprofit, no, the nonprofit end of things, not the actual clinic end of things. They were like, we would never consider a non-therapist to help run the clinic, but you have an MD, would you ever consider helping run the clinic? And I was like, yes, dream job, I do want to help you run the clinic, like,
That's awesome.
thank you. And so they gave me a shot and it worked out.
That's awesome. Yeah, and for those who don't know, Maple Counseling, tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, Maple Counseling is a 50-year long staple in Southern California. It was, as far as a clinic, a low cost mental health clinic for people to come do weekly therapy. We're a sliding scale organization. We don't take insurance, but the average cost per hour is about $20 to $30 for an hour of therapy. We're funded by the Jewish Federation, by the City of West Hollywood, by the City of Beverly Hills, by Cedar Sinai, and multiple other organizations. Um, we were started because a bunch of mothers in the 70s were worried that their children were getting into drugs and alcohol. Their teen children were getting into drugs and alcohol, so they created kind of like a counseling slash therapy center that then morphed into one of the biggest training sites and centers for people to get seen for therapy 50 years later.
That's
So
amazing.
uh, we train future therapists and we see clients, and we also do early emotional health education. We are in about 30 classrooms around all of Southern California, and we teach emotional health basics to
Right.
kids, about 550 kids a week.
That's amazing.
Amazing. I didn't know that part. I actually applied to Maple Counseling when I was in grad school. I didn't know that they had a early childhood education. That's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad I would have helped take you, Lillian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, so back to you, Amanda, personally. So I'm curious, and tell me if I bump up on any walls and like all good. Um, so um, so I know that like in every, every culture there are barriers if you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, right? So, what was that like, kind of realizing who you are and kind of navigating that with your parents and potentially with dating and things like that as a Persian American Jew?
Yeah, so snapshot, we're in the mid 90s, right? So we're not talking non-binary, we're not talking any terms. There were no terms. There were the girls' aisle and the boys' aisle and the toy store, and that's about it. There were people that were secretly queer that would not come out. Definitely in, hi, Olga. Um, Definitely not in the larger American community. We just went through the whole AIDS crisis, so it was a very taboo topic. Not to mention being in Beverly Hills, living right outside of the city of West Hollywood, and having to hear all of the harassment every single time you drive through West Hollywood. You just have to hear so much negative hostility towards queer people, not only in the larger American scene, but also within our own households. I'm not sure how it was brought up in your household, Lillian, ever, if you ever heard negative things about the gay community in your household when you were growing up.
So I lived in the Valley, so it's not like I was across the street from West Hollywood. I would say that it was either not talked about or, like, in hindsight, now we have this term microaggressions, jokes like
Jokes,
without
yes.
tact were
Yeah,
made
just,
all the time. Like
and they were made on
after
purpose.
dinner at Shabbat, people would be making jokes that we now see as politically incorrect and very insensitive.
And when you cut forward to the activism part, you're moving into this space knowing you're going to be the butt of everyone's joke. Like, you're going to be talked at all the Shabbat dinner tables. You know that you're walking completely into the fire.
Yep.
Uh, that you have to really kind of stick your neck out there and know that uh, you're putting sorry, you're putting a face to the movement. But one last thing is that the movement had some faces, but almost all of them were exclusively male. If you cut to like 2015, sorry, no, 2010, like there were some queer Persian activists coming out speaking up about their experience. There was an article in the LA Times speaking about the Persian Jewish queer experience, but it was exclusively male. So there were no females on the scene whatsoever. And that's because I think, and Lillian, you could highlight this for
Yeah,
me, your opinion, like there was almost no utility for a lesbian female in the Persian community that is so male dominated and male centric that if you did not want to appease a male, or now I don't identify
absolutely.
as lesbian, identify as bisexual, so there was a good amount of time where I was perceived as straight, not
Well,
because I'm bisexual, but yeah.
well, bi invisibility is a
Yes. Oh,
Right.
double-edged sword, right? Because
Yeah.
like,
we don't
oh
have to.
oh you
Yeah.
can hide. It's like, well, but really, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I went to my rabbi and I was like, okay, I'm coming out. I'm doing it. Like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be the first. I don't care. And I was like, but I want to do it right. And I don't want to shut the door behind me. I want to keep it as open as possible for everyone behind me. So, like, should I just come out as a lesbian just so it's less confusing to everyone? Because if I come out as bi, then they're gonna be like, what are you talking about this, And he was like, if you're going to be authentic, like be authentic all the way. So I, anyway,
Good rabbi.
no,
Wait, is this like a Persian rabbi or a queer community
no, this is
rabbi?
Rabbi Wolpe. Rabbi Wolpe, who at Sinai Temple, he was
Oh,
grappling with the he did not know whether he could stick his neck out for the queer community and start performing queer Jewish marriages because he would get so much backlash, particularly from the Iranian contingency of his own temples. So he went back and forth, and then he finally came forward with the decision that he would do it and got a lot of backlash for that.
Wow.
But anyway, I'm here to answer questions, not only to just to blab, but yeah.
Oh no, you're fine. At what point did it feel like, okay, like I'm out, I'm here, like, and then like, because I know the coming out process is continual, right? Like even if you're for like pretty much for a lifetime, but not to the same extent as when you're younger. But like at what point did it feel like, okay, I did the brave thing?
Uh, Never.
Okay. Yeah.
Never.
Well, that's
Yeah,
right.
it never felt like I did the brave
Okay.
thing. It always felt like I did the right thing
Yeah.
for Shalom Bait,
Yeah.
even though it was like tearing up my family, which is peace in the home, even though I was tearing up my nuclear family and my extended family and the community, and there was so much balagan going on because I was coming out so I would say without any remorse. I think the I wasn't because I was like, I'm not trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to like not ruin some man's life by being in a sham marriage. Do you hear me? Like, and by the way, I'm talking about sham marriages.
Yeah.
Are we going to talk about that ever? Because look around. So I did as more of like a public health. It was more of a public health argument that I was trying to make.
Yeah.
And once they heard that, then they were like, "Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, okay." And then I was like, there are a bunch of queer teens that are their mental health is suffering, and this is obviously not mental health coded. The core of this whole thing is mental health.
Yeah.
So it was like, do you care about your children? Do you care about having happy mothers and having happy marriages? And it was more of like the moment I started, and I'm not gonna say preach, but the moment that I started focusing on nuclear family
Yeah.
and that
And
this is all about the nuclear family. Do you guys see it or do you not see it? And the fact that I am an MD, they were like, okay, well, let's listen to you, I guess, because degrees mean a lot to people in our community. So it just took off. Not by me alone, but the whole movement started getting traction with all of us coming together.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, and I know you're like you say like you've kind of become a therapist by osmosis, but I mean sometimes you meet people and you're like, wow, like they're intuitively a therapist. And you've kind of got it because it's like, yeah, it's like you're part of a community that like accolades and credentials matter a lot, but also like you did that thing that a lot of us as therapists do. And it's like sometimes if the personal feels too intense, like this big reveal personally is too intense, you kind of lift it up into the intellectual and the
Yeah.
global and the community level and then ease back down into the personal. And like, brilliant, brilliant job. Like, that's really awesome.
Thank you. But I want to know actually from Lillian how it was perceived as an ally in the community when this was all happening. Like, what was your experience as an ally between, like, I would say 2015 and 2020, like when you started peeking into the movement?
I think for me, I was very focused on my nuclear family because my sister came out. I don't want to like give too much information, but I will just say it wasn't so black and white for her. So Amanda said earlier, before there was the girls aisle, there was the boys aisle, there was no non-binary, no trans, etc. And so my sister is like somewhere I'll say in between. And so I was kind of witnessing all of this and really wanting to advocate for her and seeing how much of a hard time she was having. And so I think my sort of introduction into the Jewish Persian queer community was really because of what was going on in my nuclear family and wanting to, I don't want to say keep the peace, but like really advocate for her and make sure that she was um, still receiving love and respect.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, I mean, speaking of being a tomboy, which I assume she was, as I am and was and still am, like I could there was never a day where I was not fighting with my mom about clothing. Ever.
Yeah, yeah,
Ever. There was
right.
never a day. She wanted me to go to the piano concert in tights and a dress, and I just put on my soccer kit, my soccer gear with my shins guards, and I was like, I'm going to soccer. I don't know what to tell you,
Yeah.
like I told my mom I wanted at the age of 8, 9. I wanted to chop off all my hair and call myself Andy. And she was like, yeah, that's like an absolute no. Like you are literally not gonna ever do that. We're never gonna speak about this again. Andy doesn't exist. There's no Andy,
That's fair.
zero, nothing, none of it. And then
Yeah.
cut to my first real strong crush on a girl that was my basketball teammate when I would say probably, between 12 to 14, my teammate. And, I started exploring with my mom. I was like, there was this rumor that there was this Persian family in New York that, two or three out of their four sons were gay, right? And my mom thought it was the biggest tragedy in the world, and so she heard the news and then hung up the landline and like said prayers and all of these things for this family. And then I had to like, meanwhile, I'm grappling with my own very strong crush. And, I just kind of on the way back from home from school one day, I said, like, Mom, like, what if, let's talk about that family. Like, and she's like, oh man, I would never want to be that mom,
Oh.
like, whoa, okay, like, stuff it down,
Message received. Yeah.
message received, so, and this is having a very obviously queer child, and saying that to your child, knowing that I've always been a tomboy my whole life. Like, what was it going to be a surprise, to you ever? So that's kind of like the childhood experience of a queer Iranian Jew, in that sense.
And if I can share beyond the childhood experience, if we go back to clothing and optics, because our culture is
Oh yeah.
very
Oh my God.
optics focused, even though I'm a straight woman, I have calls with my cousins before our big family parties, mehmoonies, they're called. And we're like, okay, what are you going to wear? Because we are kind of, in a sense, preparing for battle. Like we are about to show up and be critiqued without asking for it. So then you have this layer of like culture or subcultural norms. And then also to be queer, it's like so many layers.
Yeah.
Is it okay to bring Olga into the conversation? Is
Yeah.
that
Yo, absolutely. I think that that's the biggest thing. Like we like trying to learn about all these layers of what it means to be part of the Persian Jewish community and to hold that identity. And I mean things like, like these parties with like, being very image conscious and all of that, like it's something that I think everyone would really benefit from hearing from people within the community because when you're just on the outside you kind of fill in the gaps with your own lens and your own assumptions. And I want to make sure we don't do that kind of a disservice.
oh,
So yeah. So please go on. Yeah.
well, thank you. I think you're so great, Helena, at just creating space and understanding nuance and turning over all the stones. Like you're so diligent, like intellectually and emotionally diligent. So
Thank
I've
you.
only met with you twice, but I just want to thank you because that's very obvious
I
that you have
appreciate
that ability. Yeah.
I think it comes from being like starting when I was 10. I didn't really fit in with my local Jewish community and I had Jewish friends, but it wasn't really, I had to kind of dig around and find little niches and, reach a little further and stuff like that. And so I think it's important that everyone be seen, and connected
Yeah.
with and understood.
We
So
would have definitely been friends, that's for sure.
yes. Yeah. Well, I was born in 86 too, so we totally would have.
Yeah, we would have definitely been friends for sure in elementary school.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so tell me, what are these parties called again?
Okay, so it's called yeah, mehmuni.
Okay.
I can put it in the chat the way that it might be spelled
Yeah,
in English, but it just means party.
Okay. Okay, cool.
yeah,
Mehmuni.
yeah, man.
Okay.
It's just a large gathering, and you know that you're just gonna get picked apart, judged to death,
If
So,
or
it's with your family,
or
like
to
I met
life.
Amanda at her house at her mehmoni that she was hosting. That was not the same. Like I walked into that space, and this is actually, I don't think I've talked to you about this, Amanda. This was actually a really, you guys were talking about not fitting in, Helena, you said with your Jewish community as a child. I don't think I really connected with my Jewish community until after high school in young adulthood. So when I met Amanda at her house at this Jewish queer event, I kind of felt like immediate relief that I was walking into a space that was different
yeah.
and I could just show up, even though I don't know any, like maybe I knew two or three people that were going to be there that night. I was walking into someone's house that I didn't know, but I knew I wasn't about to be picked apart because there were other people there that were also different.
Yeah. And there's a layer of that that I wanted to speak about, although it's a little risque to speak about,
Oh, good.
which is there the and please Lillian correct me and or fill in the gaps here, but the Iranian Jewish community is a bit different from my observation than the Ashkenazi Jewish community in the sense that there is a little bit of a caste system. Like, there's like,
Mm,
what does your dad do? How much money do you guys make? Where do you live? Like, all of these create a hierarchical structure that you can't marry up in the caste. You can't, you shouldn't marry down in the caste. And I think in that, would you agree with this, Lillian?
yeah, yeah.
Like,
I think
Valley, West Side.
exactly that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and the thing is that if one was to take that, people ask like, why don't people with privilege do more? And the question is, and the answer is often because the higher the attention or the higher the privilege, the higher the stakes,
Mhm.
like the actual harder it is to stand out.
Yeah.
And I think that the event that Lillian came to was a little bit of a more groundbreaking event only because it was taking all of that privilege and being like, yes, you can come to an LGBTQ Shabbat dinner in Beverly Hills, at the house of a cardiologist. You know what I'm saying? It was like taking all that privilege and flipping it out on its head of like, it's not like LGBTQ people are like lowly, lower caste people. It's that like you can just flip it and start from the top, and then that's how I think a lot the trickle down did work culturally. That's what my experience was. Is that we made so much progress in such little time because the people making the progress were of the caste that people were paying attention to, if that made any sense. I don't know. That's a weird way to put it,
Yeah.
but it's like just imagine if, and I'll stop here, but you know, in the British monarchy, how little George, little baby George is like he's a little effeminate, he's a little queer. Just imagine in your head if he was queer. I'm not trying to place sexuality on a child. I'm just saying, imagine the future king of England. Just imagine the future king of England turns out to be a queer man, meaning after his father, William, it's gonna be George,
Yeah.
right? If George proudly owned, like, I'm just saying if George was queer, I'm just saying if, I'm
Hmm,
not,
hmm.
but if George was queer and future generations have a queer king of England in the future, that progresses things a lot. You know what I'm saying? So that's all that I meant of like when it comes from that level of attention, then people start just accepting it because it comes from the top. I don't know, Lillian, what your thoughts are.
Because, well, basically what you're saying is because there's representation, where people are paying attention to it. And
Exactly.
that's
People are paying
important. And
attention.
that creates progress. Yeah.
People are paying attention. People are paying attention, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm mindful that we have 10 minutes left. Do we still
oh,
want to talk about Nowruz?
yeah, let's do it. And we can, I mean, if either of you can stay later, like that would be cool to ask some other questions. Are you either of you available to go like to half past, or do you have a client,
I
Lillian?
th- I think that I am. Yeah, I actually don't have a client.
Awesome.
I had a cancellation, so
Okay.
it works out.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, we'll share your screen and then we'll talk about like other mental health stuff within the Persian Jewish community. This is so helpful, by the way, as Lillian's loading that slide. I just want to say, Amanda, like I have a specific client that what you were describing has helped. It's like the decoder ring. It's like the Rosetta Stone that's like, that's what they meant when they talked about that, like it's really, really helpful.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that it was helpful. What a beautiful slide. I
That
love
is a
it.
beautiful slide.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that I can see you guys at the same
Um,
time,
did you
but maybe
which
that's
which
not
thing did
possible.
you click did you just click
It's
share?
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I just clicked. It's fine.
Okay.
You guys were there and now you're not, but that's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
We're
All
here
right,
in
everyone.
spirit.
So here we go. Nowruz Mubarak, which means Happy Persian New Year. Spring is upon us. So Nowruz or Persian New Year, Helena, as you mentioned, it has its roots in Zoroastrianism. Persian New Year is celebrated on the start of spring, the spring equinox, and it is over 3,000 years old, which I actually didn't know. So this is an ancient holiday, not only celebrated in Iran, but also neighboring parts of the world. The key traditions are to create a half scene, which is a spread of various items with symbology we'll get into in a moment. Spring cleaning. So all of our moms, everyone was furiously cleaning the house. Families are typically getting new outfits and gifts for Nowruz. It's like really very much a renewal, starting over. So everything is like being prepared to be fresh and new. And then there's jumping over the fire or Charshambe Suri, and then Sizdabadar, which we can also get into. So I'm going to focus on the half scene. As I mentioned, it's a symbolic arrangement of items, and it's every item in the half scene starts with the letter S, and those items represent themes such as renewal, prosperity, and health. So I've included some examples here of beautiful half scenes that I found. I wish I could take credit, but they are not mine. So every item you see on the half scene represents some sort of theme of renewal, prosperity, new beginnings. So here, mirror in Farsi is aine, candle is sham, mahi is fish, senjed, tokhme morgh, those are eggs, sib is apple. I'm not going to say all of them, but just a few. We have sear, this is garlic. And let's get into the symbology. So sabze, or these lentil sprouts usually are used. Sabze, basically, so I grew up seeing my mom put out these little lentils and water them, and over time, up until Nowruz, you would see them grow from little tiny lentils up until these what looks like grass, basically. So this is a symbol of rebirth and renewal of nature. Samanu, which is a sweet paste, symbolizes fertility, the sweetness of life. Senjed, which is a Persian olive, represents love and affection. Serke, vinegar, patience and age. Sib, or apple, health and beauty. Stir, or garlic, good health. Somagh, which I love, the crushed spice of berries, represents the sunrise and the spice of life. So then you'll see extras sometimes, like the mirror, coins to symbolize wealth and prosperity, mahi representing life, which is kind of funny to me, tokhmemorgh, or egg, fertility, sham, or candle, enlightenment, and more shirini, sweets, just spreading the sweetness of life.
Lovely.
So I'll stop sharing, but I did want to read this quote that I wrote about my experience of Nowruz. Um, so Nowruz feels like a magical holiday to me as winter turns to spring, bearing witness as the flowers bloom and the fragrances take hold. Childhood memories of Sabze taking shape in anticipation of more quality time with the sun. It makes me feel connected to my heritage in a way that supersedes religious divides, strengthening my connection to my grandparents and an estranged homeland with which I live in awe. It is a particularly sweet reminder of new beginnings as another season ends. Um, and that's everything. I put my contact also, so I will share that for anyone that wants to get into contact with me to talk about all things therapy, Nowruz, or poetry also. Um, and that's all, folks.
Oh, that's awesome. That was lovely. You have a really poetic way
Thanks.
with words, Lillian. Like that was really delightful to hear that.
Thank you, Helena.
Do you write as well? Like
I
are
do.
yeah? Oh,
Yeah, I'm starting to own it a bit more. I'm stepping into being a poet.
oh,
Yes.
I love that. Isn't it interesting how like I know this is like off to the side, but that journey from being like I like poetry to I dabble to I write to I'm a poet, like embrace
Yeah,
the noun. Yeah.
it's a journey. Yeah. I actually started out like as a child, I wrote a poem about time and that got published in this like contest. And then more recently, I was at a rock climbing gym maybe 3 years ago, and a friend of mine was publishing a book around diversity and culture, and it was supposed to be a cookbook. So she was asking for submissions, and I wrote a poem about Iran and my relationship to Iran as someone who has never been there, but is so much in love with our culture. And that ended up getting published. And so since then, I was like, oh, I think I'm good at this. Like, I should keep going. But it takes a long time to be like, wait, no, am I good at this? No, maybe I'm good at this. And like, you keep kind of teeter-tottering around that. So,
Yeah.
yes, it's a process.
That's awesome. You know what? Actually, I kind of want to go down that route. So, I'm curious, both of you, what is your relationship with Iran like? Because I know that as an Ashkenazi person, um, whose family was last in diaspora, like in Eastern Europe, right? Um, there are some things that are kind of markers of the outside culture there, but a lot of things like, oh, they didn't want us. It wasn't really our place, and like and it's sort of this that's just sort of a why would you like I remember talking to my grandma once and saying how I wanted to go see, where the family was from in Ukraine, and she's like, oh, why would you want to do that? Right. But every Persian Jew I know, whether they were born there or whether they've never seen it, I, I've noticed a certain light and an affinity toward Iran that's like really really cool, So I'm curious, what is it that kind of makes it sparkle for you?
So I think it really depends who you ask. Like growing up, I would always ask my family about Iran, and it was really difficult for them to
Okay.
talk about, like, because it's kind of this home that is not their home anymore, and it was taken from them and it was renamed, and their childhood, the name of their street maybe has been changed to something else. So it was very like wrapped in so much grief and sadness that they would prefer not to talk about it. But for me, I think that this is the developing thought, but it created sort of like a romantic connection, because it's like, well, this is who I am, but I'm also cut off. I've also never been there. I've also never seen or tasted or smelled or, all of the things, felt what it's like to be there. So I can send the poem in the chat because it really answers your question. Amanda, how about you?
Can't wait to read your poem. I want to, see like see what you wrote. I think I can't speak for most, but I can only speak for the what I hear from my friends and from everyone that I know. So I can speak for most of the people that I know. It would be like the two words would be like intense longing. and
Mm.
an intense longing. And for some, the longing is so intense that it's also like a traumatically intense longing. Like it is just like it's almost as if how, Jews feel about the land of milk and honey is of how Iranians feel about Iran.
Yeah.
It is just thing is that Iran has, did you put it in the chat?
I didn't.
Okay.
I can either share screen or show it in the chat. What would you guys prefer?
Click on the screen. Why not?
Yeah, yeah,
Share
yeah,
screen?
yeah.
Okay, because it's kind of long. Uh, I don't want it to get lost. Okay,
For Iran, here we go.
so here we go. Have you ever been in love with a stranger? Hints of cardamom, jasmine, and rosewater tease your nostrils to ease in closer. But you can't go there anymore, for your ancestors still wince at the memory of the burn. Have you ever been in love with a stranger? Though you've never met, you long to dwell in her temples and mosques, to visit the Caspian Sea, where your father was still whole, sense of wonder with which you're awestruck. Have you ever been in love with a stranger, mesmerized by the movement of her hips, sights, scents, sweets, and sours you've grown impossibly close to, and yet still miss the mark? Have you ever been in love with a stranger, foreign experience with which you're estranged, though you pray to grow nearer, reflecting on her undeniable impact? Have you ever been in love with a stranger, salivating as Reme over Tadig passes you by, your stomach aching from too much lavoshak, though you stay wanting more? So you pray for a reunion, merely a visit. To be in love with a stranger, the tension between you and a home you've never been, I suppose it's better to have witnessed from afar than never to have been touched by her power at all.
Ooh, wow.
Chills,
Yeah.
chills,
Yeah. Yeah.
chills, major chills.
Amazing.
So that's how I feel about it, Helena. It's like it's me, right? It's part of me, but
Yeah.
I've never been there.
Yeah.
And I hope in my lifetime that I will be able to go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Olga.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's also it's this trauma paired with hope.
Yeah. Well, I guess on that end, I'm curious. I know the Persian Jewish community there is pretty big, but outside, like in terms of the rest of the Persian community, Muslim, Christian, unaffiliated, um, does the Persian Jewish community tend to connect with the greater Persian community at all, or is it more insular or
You go
I don't
first,
know,
Amanda.
Lillian, you could say more because of the Valley experience, because in the Valley, I think that there's a lot more overlap for sure. Not on the west side of LA. Oh, we're talking about Los Angeles.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I will share my experience was very much pushed by when my mom wanted me to do certain things, like wear dresses when I wanted to wear basketball shorts, like Amanda was saying. I didn't want to do them even more.
Mm,
So when she would tell me, "Why don't you have any Jewish friends? Why don't you have any Persian Jewish friends?" My like little 8-year-old self, I don't know, even then was like, that's not right. Like, I need to be friends with everyone, not just because they're Persian Jewish. So from childhood, I made a concerted effort to be friends with anyone, regardless of where they came from. And I actually didn't have, like, I wonder if it did the opposite thing, where I actually didn't really feel like I fit in with the Persian Jews at my school. I felt like this is a stereotype, not all of them were very optics focused and maybe more girly girls. And I wanted to play basketball and I didn't really care for like designer
mm,
things or luxury cars. And so I felt different from an early age. And like I said, it wasn't until after high school where I felt like, wait, actually, this is really nice to be able to sit with you and speak our mother tongue and be able to bond over these commonalities that are natural. But I think still those friendships were not created unless there was like a true connection beyond culture and religion. So for me, I feel like I have a kind of a different experience. Um, but yeah, to have Persian friends was one thing, to have Persian Jewish friends was another thing.
Hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know many non-Persian Jews until I think one of the first non-Persian Jews that I met that was my age was in high school, and that was an Iranian Zoroastrian girl, which is how I learned about Zoroastrian culture. Um, but I wasn't interfacing with non-Jewish Iranians ever, other than my karate instructor was a Muslim Iranian who essentially left Iran during the revolution because he was one of like the counter revolutionaries, and he set up shop in Beverly Hills and had this Muslim like he was the captain of the Iran national karate team who just set up shop in Beverly
Mm.
Hills and started
Oh.
training a bunch of little Persian Jewish kids to like be like Rough Rider, like street
Oh.
fighters. And like, so it was like this odd thing that we were all being taught by a Muslim Iranian man, but he wasn't really Muslim as in practicing. He was actually anti-Muslim because he was like anti the revolution. So, but that was like the only Ir Iranian non-Jew that I knew growing up.
Yeah. So this optics thing, like where does it come from?
Survival.
Aberu?
Survival. Yeah.
Survival.
Yeah.
Survival instinct. Like,
So the word that I used, I think it's Arberu, I'm not sure, but it means reputation.
Mhm.
And so this reputation is a very important part of like the stereotypical I'll say Persian values. Like you will hear often, you would hear often growing up in my household, what are other people going to think? And maybe that is based off of what Amanda said, survival.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
survival. But the thing is that the Jewish community at large, the Ashkenazi Jewish community, is all about survival. But you don't hear that, you know?
Well,
It's
I mean, from where I sit, and like I, this is perhaps where I didn't fit in either. I think growing up, but a lot of the Ashkenazi community, like, I mean, even look at the food, right? It was poverty food. It was poverty food, right? And so it's like there are different ways of either showing off or self-preservation. And so the Ashkenazi community was really, really big on like you're chained to school for 30 years because what you keep in your head is what you get to carry with you. You know, so it wasn't as much,
Mm.
it was survival, but it was a different kind of survival. But then like a lot of the Ashkenazi community that I grew up with kind of flirted with like demonstrable wealth and things like that too. But I think it was different. It didn't have like a depth connection of like embodying like illustrating who you are and what you want to present as to people, and you know what I mean, it didn't have the
well, that fits
okay.
into the caste stuff that we were talking about
Yeah.
before. You want so badly to prove that you are of the higher caste that there would be people that would pay like be essentially renting homes but driving super expensive cars, you know, and like not owning properties so they could be seen out in the streets a certain way, and that kind of, you know, the trade-off to like all of that stuff, it's just mind-boggling.
It's kind of like what it takes, that instead of being so future focused of like home ownership or whatever, just okay, if I get to present that I'm okay, then it means I'm okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, everything's cool as long as I have the bends in the driveway.
Yeah.
That was the cultural norm.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me more about like cultural norms and what do you see as like mental health stuff? Like what do people need to know when treating Persian clients or even like a Persian family, which is that's a whole other thing, right?
Yeah. I can jump in, Lillian. You are
Go ahead. I'll fit in. I'll fit after. Go ahead, Amanda.
my dad is obsessed with the Nike. just do it tagline.
Mm.
Like he's obsessed with it, and it's very Persian for some reason that he'll come into my room as a child and he'll be like, just do it. You know what I'm saying? Like there's this like impatience
Mm.
with being Iranian. Lillian, you agree? Like there's this like very it's like this
Urgency.
urgency. It's almost as if, I mean, his favorite joke comes from Family Guy, I believe, where there's this, it's very Asian as well. It's Iran is pan-Asian in a sense, so it's like, are you a doctor yet? Like this kind of pressure of like this intense mental pressure that never relents. At least that's what I grew up with. An intense, just do it, go be a doctor, mental pressure that never relents. And that is then colored by financial pressure and colored by your appearance and colored by all the things fitting in and the survival instinct, and everything that we've spoken about just gets layered on layered on layered on layered on layered, as to like trying to pretty much mask what like a healthy soul, you
Mm.
know like and it's a wonder to me how the most beautiful poets like Rumi and Hafez have come from this like Iranian culture that is so intensely oriented to like kind of shape you rather than let you express yourself. That's you are being shaped from day one rather than being told that it's okay to express yourself, and that's very un-American,
Mm.
at least to my parents. So that's my own personal experience. Lillian, what do you think?
I think in my experience, I mean, as a Persian Jewish person and also working with uh, Persian Jewish people and other children of immigrants with similar cultural norms, acknowledging the potential clashes between individualistic and collectivist culture.
Mm.
So it is, I think, an art to acknowledge with clients the process of individuation while also respecting the affinity they have for their culture and their family. So it's not as easy as saying, who cares if your mom wants to be a lawyer and you want to be a chef, just go be a chef. You need to have this understanding of our community that family is really important. And I think, again, it's a dance. Like I tell clients all the time, it doesn't mean you have to go like hyper independent or super collectivist and neglect yourself. But what would it be like if you took some pieces of this, some pieces of that, and created the cocktail that felt right for you? I
Mm.
think in working with kids of immigrants, I had this conversation with a client today. Not today, sorry, yesterday, from a different uh, ethnic background, but a lot of overlapping norms.
Mm. Mm.
So redirecting to them as the beholder rather than what do mommy and daddy think
Yeah.
is very delicate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting because there is that very aggressive individualism in sort of dominant American culture. Everything from like the self-made man myth to like the fact that so many people live alone in their apartment or whatever. And it's just like it's a huge shift. And one of the biggest things that we've had at the JTC, and not just with Persian Jews, but with just Jews in general, especially like first generation immigrant and just very like recently to America, it's having encountered a therapist that pathologizes multi-generational living, that pathologizes enmeshment, that things like that, when those are constructs, right? To the idea that, you need to go be away. You need to isolate yourself. And it's amazing how so many therapists don't even realize that they're doing it. Even the ones who are sitting and reading about, the hot buzzword lately, decolonization, or the hot buzzwords of like cultural competence, they don't get that a lot of these concepts really need to be tempered by like knowing the client.
Yeah. I mean, it was much easier for me to do medical school in Israel and come out in Israel because I wouldn't be around Persian Jews.
Mm,
Mm.
Whereas if I went to any medical school in the States, Miami or any, New York or anywhere else where I'd be seen
mhm,
on a date with a girl, that would be the end of it? So I had to move to Israel
mhm.
to come out. And there's this exodus that happens for a lot of people that kind of just like go into the desert to like find their own identity because they can't do it with everyone watching.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's almost like those parallels to other cultures, right? Like the Amish when they kind of go away for that coming of age, right? Um, is that a pretty common trend? Like not trend like trendy, but like do you see like a lot of people doing that kind of moving away
Oh,
to kind of let me think. I don't want everyone's voices.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 100%. And even that was very common with our age
Yeah.
range. So
Yeah.
anybody who's late 30s now, for
Yeah.
sure. But like now, because of the work that we've done, we're seeing that things are a lot more integrated. That it's no longer taboo to be queer in the Persian community. It's still taboo to be trans, it's still taboo to be non-binary. I think gender is still needing a moment,
Yeah.
but as far as sexual orientation, it's no longer taboo. For the most part, Lillian, I'm sure you would agree with me. So
Yeah.
like people no longer have to like leave town in order to experiment
Yeah.
or to find themselves. But if you're trans or non-binary, I still think it's an issue.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if that goes back to how you kind of have to like the optics thing. I mean, especially for non-binary folks, like even in the general community, like there's that whole big thing about like, does non-binary have to look, androgynous and thin and this and that and add on a layer of an optics heavy culture and I don't know how people would navigate that.
Yeah, yeah.
Olga wants to know, can you speak more about survival in caste? Do you mean survival in the greater world or survival within the community?
Yeah, I can just sum it up with one line. Oh, the Madahi daughter, XYZ. All of a sudden, the Madahi daughter, XYZ, has taken down the whole family. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's that in a nutshell. You don't want to be the person that takes your family down because your family has gone through so much and so many individuals trying to build it up that you don't want to be the person that takes your family down. And so I don't know how next month I'm getting engaged and my whole family is showing up and it's this big party, all fancy schmancy, and everybody is on board. And my girlfriend, soon to be fiance, is on the call. Ivana, she's right there. I don't know how it happened, but somehow it did. And like somehow the Madahi girl didn't take down the family or that kind of stuff. So we survived. But
Okay.
Was
what I
that
that's what I mean. Thank you. That's what I mean by survival and caste. It's that you can't be that person.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, let's see. Anything, I guess, I know that I'm sure that we could probably sit for hours and because I mean both of you are just lovely to sit down and talk with too and then you get all of the
thank
depth
you.
of the community. What what do you feel like you want to give voice to that we haven't explored?
I'm kind of stuck on our conversation about considerations with working with our community as therapists. And I just wanted to say, like, one more specific consideration. I teach my clients about setting boundaries, and I don't know if you all have seen that PDF, the Personal Bill of Rights, float around. It's very popular as an intervention in our field. Every single time I teach my clients an intervention like that, I preface it with, and also there's no one size fits all. You need to figure out what feels right for you. I make it very known this is taken from a very Western individualistic lens, and that's not where you come from, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm feeling the need to voice that.
I appreciate that. And I imagine, Amanda, when you're working with interns, right? And they're kind of testing out their therapist legs and like they've got handouts and worksheets and they're supposed to be like doing like all of this stuff. Finding where they can pause and throw some intuition in there and kind of stand up to these like faceless stacks of worksheets is a process, right?
And I love working with new therapists. They are the best. Like I love them. They're so eager and they want to get in there. But yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it as far as like their intuition,
Yeah,
and kind of sticking to that intuition. And the ones who do stick to their intuition
yeah, yeah.
fare better in the therapy field. And I wanted to highlight just one difference between kind of like the Ashkenazi Jewish community and the Iranian Jewish community in the way that we're kind of accepted in America.
Mhm.
As far as being white passing, I know we kind of touched on this a little, Helena.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel? I would actually like to ask an Ashkenazi Jew,
Yeah.
how do you feel when you are, let's say, with like a non-Jewish white person? Do you feel othered by them?
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable actually. It's very it's so weird to say because it really depends. It depends on the scene. Like I remember driving through Kentucky once between Chicago and DC, and like it was like a college thing. The Jews in the car were notably uncomfortable. And like there are Jews in Kentucky, but it's like it was very, you get nervous, right? Because I mean, I think what's so hard about like race dialogue today is they've made it so binary, right? And my hope with the JTC at least I want to be able to amplify Jewish voices of color, while also not stipulating to the idea that light-skinned Jews are white in the same way that
Right.
our perpetrators are white. You know what I mean?
That's the nuance that I'm grappling with
Yeah.
because, it is very clear, or it seems like when I was growing up, that I could always look at the Ashkenazi Jews that I was mostly friends with. Like I was mostly friends. I mean, I was 50-50 friends with Ashkenazi Jews and Persian Jews growing up. And I could look at my Ashkenazi friends and I'll be like, well, you look like what people look like on TV.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
like you look like what people look like on TV. So walking around, you're kind of more able to assimilate
Yeah.
versus us, where there's no, or maybe very little chance that somebody's going to see my last name or the tone of my skin and think that I am white or Caucasian, And then there's this whole nuanced layer that then so I'm darker than Caucasian individuals, right? But then to people of color, I'm white passing. So there's this paradox that Persian individuals live in, Middle Eastern people live in, whether Jewish or not, that we live in a paradox where we're white passing, but we're not white. So we're othered by them and we're othered by them. And I just want to know where white Jews, Ashkenazi Jews fit in that, because do you also feel othered?
Yeah. Yeah. Very similarly, but also I think with one of the differences being like I would imagine that when people kind of do a double take and kind of stare you down and go, well, what, not who, but what are you, right? That thing,
Uh,
like, I didn't get that type of a question as much as I know that my Persian friends have,
yeah,
right?
no,
That
you
sort of ambiguity space where you're kind of turned into an it, as exoticized. Like, I think I fared better when I straightened my hair, but I mean, other than
straighten
that,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not anymore. I mean, I think I went to Israel when I was 22 and I saw these confident curly haired women and I was like, oh, fuck it.
Done. Yeah. I will tell you a
With their
joke
hair
though.
on top of their head, like
Right.
totally confident.
Queens. Queens. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I'll
think
tell
that's
you.
an
Go
interesting
ahead,
question
Olivia.
too, because I think it also depends. So some Ashkenazi Jews are visibly, people can tell they're visibly Jewish, and their experience is different. Some people you won't necessarily know, but they still have, right? They're still white passing. They're not white in the traditional sense that we teach of because they've gone through so much oppression, right? If we look at race in that context, that it's a social construct. And then there are Jews who, let's say like me, who some people can tell immediately by the way that I look and by my last name. And some people, if they don't know my last name, they won't know. So I've experienced several things, right? Where some people will know right away and I'll experience things based off that. And some people won't know, and then I'll hear comments of how they really feel about Jews. And I've
Ah,
had
Mm.
experiences where one person just, and I'm very much, if I hear comments about how people, their stereotypes about Jews or negative views, I'm not shy about being like, by the way, I'm Jewish. And that has happened to me. And sometimes people kind of, they'll backtrack. But once I had an experience where she was just the Jew, and I was like, that, I am. And she just gave me the look of like disgust and never spoke to me again. But
Oof.
she wasn't even white. Like, so I'm not even speaking white or not. I'm speaking in general about people and right, the white passing, but also viewing as Jewish and people's perceptions. So just that's something else.
well, I do have a joke, which is my joke is that my brother is a music executive, okay? And there are certain country music artists that refuse to work with the liberal coastal elites because
Oh,
majority of the music professionals, like the executives, are either in New York or LA, right? And so they refuse to work with the big companies. But because my brother is a Persian Jew and he's more conservative,
that's funny.
right? His music label has thrown him to Nashville and to Texas
Oh, wow.
as the representative of the company because
Wow.
he's more conservative than his liberal counterparts. So I just thought that that was funny that you can actually be so turned around that way that you're sending the brown Jew into the South because you guys are more conservative than the white liberals
Let
in
me
the
ask you about that then. Like, what do you think it is that makes the Persian Jewish community kind of skew more to the right?
Yeah, I want to say that I hear a lot about, oh, I'm a fiscal Republican. I wonder if money has to do with it. What do you think, Amanda?
I think it has to do with the experience of, and I am so, coexist, but I think not but and I think when you grow up with like right next door to very extreme uh uh
Ideology.
ideology when you grow up with it, like Israelis are also trending right. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like when you grow up next door face to face, when you're interfacing with extreme ideology and sometimes extreme Muslim, unfortunately, ideology. I don't want to target anybody. I'm just saying that if you're a Jewish person growing up right next to extreme Muslim ideology, you're going to tend to be more conservative, to kind of want to fight back that ideology. You just turn out more, I don't know, I don't want to say any wrong
No,
words or
it
step on
tracks
any
though.
landmine.
Like, I would imagine that whatever is most salient in any given person's life is going to be the thing that might pull them mostly politically because and then you kind of pick your side and then justify with backflips everything else, you know? Because very few people kind of pick from column A and column B and be like, well, I like this over here and I like this over here. And a lot of people kind of have their main issue, pick their team, and then try to wedge everything else in because it makes it simpler.
Well, they think liberals are weak on terrorism.
Yeah, it's
They
true.
think liberals are weak on everything, and they don't want to be weak because they grew up in the streets in Iran where they were being beat up for being Jewish. They don't want to be weak. So that's what I'm getting. I'm not sure, Lillian, if you.
Yeah, what Amanda has said so far really makes sense. I'm also thinking about values around the nuclear family, and I think gender diversity really scaring people who are just not familiar with how natural it is.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
In terms of being in Iran and kind of, with the ideology and being othered, was that more by the government or was that by by neighbors as well?
Neighbors.
Neighbors.
Yeah.
No, you were a target when you were a young Jewish kid walking in the streets of Tehran.
Mhm.
You're just a target. You're just straight up a target. And like that's the reason why we were expelled, you know? So there's no there's no midpoint for a lot of people. They don't want to be weak, they don't want to be perceived as weak, and they want to align with the side that perceives itself as stronger.
That tracks. That tracks. Yeah. Well, okay, so one last thing before we wrap up. So I know Lillian, like you showed us the slides, but I'm curious for both of you, any like favorite tradition, and it doesn't just have to be for Nowruz, like for any favorite tradition that you have carried with you like through to adulthood or something that means a lot to you. And it can be Persian, it can be like broader than that. It can whatever comes up.
I would say for me, Shabbat at my grandma's and food, like potato tadig specifically, like
Burnt
is a
crispy rice.
tradition.
Crispy rice. Yeah.
Burnt, burnt, yeah, the
It's
bottom
not
of the
burnt, it's
pot,
just crispy rice.
fried,
Fried
crunchy,
rice.
yeah,
Crunchy rice.
crispy rice, sometimes with potatoes. That's my favorite kind. Sometimes with spaghetti. That's also really good. For me, it's the food and the gathering and the warmth that I feel over connecting with food. And like, there's something specific about this image I have at my grandma's with all of my cousins while we were younger. And now my cousins have ch their own children. Like, for me, it's that.
Mm, mm,
I'm
beautiful.
gonna have to go with same, you know? Shabbat really slaps when you go like 40 to 50 people deep, you know? It's like an epic Shabbat when it's not just
Yeah.
you and like 10 other people. It's an epic Shabbat when it's you and like 40 to 50 other people and you're all coming together every single Shabbat eating the same food and loving on the same things, you know?
That's awesome. That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, there's something amazing about Shabbat that like you go all out, but it comes every week, and it's this thing that's just, I mean, it's lovely. It's like it's in the backdrop of like secular, like of wider America beyond the Jewish community, like it's almost unfathomable to do it every week, but like, we hold space and it's cool.
It's the best.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm gonna.
Helena, if I can just say before we go, like as a finishing remark, I really appreciate you highlighting our place in the community. I actually like I think in the same time period, I was telling my fiance's mom about Persian New Year, and she's Israeli. She's Israeli and she's religious. And she's like, "What do you mean Persian New Year? There's the only New Year we have is in September," referring to Rosh Hashanah. And I just so appreciate that you like took the time and the effort and the intentionality to highlight us because we're here and we exist. And yeah, it feels good to be seen and not made to be invisible. And I think the representation is really important.
Oh, I'm so
Ditto.
glad. I'm so glad.
Ditto. Well done, Helena. Well
Oh,
done.
thanks. All right, I'm gonna turn